Columbia University in New York has over 30,000 students in its 20 schools, which include business, engineering, law, and international affairs. At Columbia, case method has long been a mainstay of teaching across disciplines and campuses. In this short film, we explored how 3 Columbia professors use different kinds of cases in their teaching.
This is what the real world is like. You go into situations like that with incomplete knowledge.
They're not just listening to you lecture. It's probably the most popular thing that we do.
At Columbia University's Business School, Professor Dan Wang's class on technology strategy is one of the school's most popular classes. It's 100% based on case method.
The entire class is case-based. Each class has approximately 74 students, and every year there is a wait list that's anywhere between 50 and 100 students for the class as well.
The class places students in the roles of executives who must evaluate and argue the pros and cons of technology innovations. Students are expected to review case materials before class meetings so that class time can be used in discussion and role play.
The case discussion unfolds in 2 parts in the classroom. The first part is trying to understand what Google's business model is, and then asking students to have a discussion based on some pre-work that they did for the class about the centrality of search as core to the business of Google.
Another Columbia professor who's embraced the case method is Marianne Price, whose general physiology class uses medical cases to introduce pre-med students to key concepts about how the human body works.
I was interested in doing some sort of active learning with the students, just as it's been shown to be a more effective way of teaching, to have the more student-led and student involvement in their own learning, and that idea of like discovery. I do tend to use the case as a way to review material from the class, but also to introduce new ideas about how things can go wrong in the body. And one of the things they do to prepare for that case study is to watch an episode of Nova about obesity and the hormones in the body.
Price uses videos like PBS's Nova series, as well as transcripts of doctor and patient interactions. The videos and transcripts help simulate for students the real-life situations they will later face as doctors.
And the case studies are kind of a lead-in to that. So they aren't actually meeting patients, although sometimes through video, I guess, but they're hearing the interaction between, or they're reading the interaction between a patient and a doctor, or the way that the initial symptoms were presenting at home, or that sort of thing.
At Columbia's School of International Affairs, or SIPA, Professor Glenn Denning is the director of the Masters in Public Administration in Development Practice. He prepares students to take on leadership roles at international and development organizations, including the United Nations, the World Bank, and many others.
We introduce the concepts of sustainable development. What is sustainable development? Sustainable development is achieving economic progress, but at the same time ensuring that there's social inclusion and there's environmental sustainability.
One of his core classes is Global Food Systems, which examines the cycles of food production and the factors that impact it.
We start really with the building blocks of the food system, so that would be soil and water and the genetic resources, the seeds that come together, that farmers bring together in order to produce food.
Denning has long built his classes around case studies. In recent years, he's used many digital cases from Columbia's public policy case collection.
It's kind of tough to teach sustainable development and to teach food systems here in New York, especially international agriculture and international food systems. And obviously surrounded in one of the most urban environments in the world.
Denning uses the video case study Saved by the Soil to share the complex and visual story of no-till agriculture.
It interviews farmers and researchers who were involved in its initial development in the United States. Now, the second part of the case is taking that and applying it to some of the challenges being experienced in Africa, where there's a very big push to increase agricultural productivity. And the actual adaptation on the ground depends on local knowledge and local ability to incorporate the particular circumstances of farmers. The students get access through our course website. They get access to a number of materials. One is a a written case. That is accompanied by a video which essentially tells that story through excellent visuals of fields and actions around no-till agriculture, but also has interspersed within that film a number of short interviews with people who are involved, farmers, researchers, academics.
While the class meets in person, Denning and his team make extensive use of their Canvas course website, both to present the video and written cases for viewing and reading before class, and also to create an online discussion forum that allows for rich pre-class debate.
It's really interesting how the different perspectives can come out very quickly in this kind of discussion when you've got a very good case foundation for it. So that's why we, a couple of years ago, introduced the idea of the online discussion forum. So in those cases, we actually require that every student in the class has to present an idea. So I think the richest learning comes out of bringing these multiple sort of techniques, instruments, if you like, of learning, bringing them together.
In another class, Denning used the case called Aid or Investment, which explores the challenges of development in post-conflict Rwanda and the Democratic Republic of the Congo.
A fairly common narrative these days we hear in development agencies and elsewhere is that what we need more is investment. What we need more is private sector growth and support for the private sector. And I think there are other views that may suggest that the private sector is mainly interested in its own interests and not in the interests of the people, of the low-income people in these areas. So it makes for quite a vigorous debate. Sometimes these post-conflict settings are still very fragile, and one has to be very careful that you don't create circumstances that lead to a collapse of the peaceful situation that had arisen. Any case that's not complex is probably not a real case.
While each class focuses on different subject matter, all professors note the positive impact that case use has on their teaching.
What cases do is that they bring students closer to real-world scenarios. I think what almost always happens is that students will begin to see that how they think about the world or this decision is not necessarily shared by all of the students in the classroom. The reason I carry this out in this way is that this mirrors almost exactly the kind of structure that product leaders have to engage in when they're in technology companies or when they're within the technology units of companies in other industries.
They like working in groups for the case studies, maybe more than other group assignments, because they do see the different perspectives.
The fact that cases connect theory to often messy reality is another benefit, encouraging students to draw on and apply their own lived experiences. This leads to exciting moments of both active learning and peer-to-peer engagement.
Definitely everybody is focused on the story of the case, but I would say one thing that's really interesting is that a lot of these students have had some clinical experience where they've shadowed a doctor or worked in an emergency room, that sort of thing. And so everybody in the group is bringing a different expertise to that case, which is often really enriching for the other students.
Another point all instructors agree on is the need to actively guide and mold class discussion and debate.
So then I will come in with a number of sort of prompts to get the students discussing the case. That itself requires some skillful curation by an instructor. It's not something we can randomly throw online and hope that it works.
And I think it's really important for instructors to take an active role in managing a case discussion. I think it's easy to be lulled into an approach in which an instructor just manages a discussion by way of making sure that students have the space to speak. But I think what's even more important than that is to react to students, is to tell them that the idea that they are mentioning has relevance in another context or another industry. And it's only by making those connections, which an instructor only has the authority to do in the classroom, that they'll be able to see how what they're actually putting together is a broader approach, a broader framework that they can take to apply to other industry contexts or other other types of problems.
For all, case method has allowed for transformative learning to happen.
I think they definitely are seeing the benefits of doing discussions and problem solving and case studies in class, though, where they're benefiting from the knowledge of their peers and from the help of the TAs and the instructor to get them through these sort of tough situations that they're being asked in the problems in the case study, rather than just having a lecture in class and doing the problem solving at home.
And sometimes the conflict and tensions that occur when there are opinions that differ about the application of a framework or an idea are those moments where there's the greatest amount of learning in the classroom. That's also the most enjoyable part for me as an instructor.
Really, the role of cases is to give, in an intensive way, a lot of experience in a relatively short period of time in problem solving under these kinds of circumstances. Because this is very close to the sort of situation that these students will have when they go out into the field and work after graduation.